Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this morning's webinar on digital connectivity. My name is James Cloughy, and I am project manager here with Irish Rural Link in Moulton, County Westmeath. Our usual webinar host, our CEO, Seamus Boland, is unfortunately held up in another meeting today due to his European commitments, but he'll hopefully join us later on in the webinar. So I'm just going to hopefully fill the gap for the next couple of minutes. So please bear with us. We have a couple of technical issues as well this morning, so please bear with us as everything goes okay. We have an excellent webinar scheduled for this morning. This is the third in our series on health and well-being, and this week we're going to talk about digital connectivity. And we have an excellent panel with us this morning. We have Joe Lavin from National Broadband Ireland, who's going to talk to us about the broadband rollout. We're going to talk to Jim Folan, who is going to talk to us about teaching people to get online, and he's a tutor here with Irish Rural Link. And we have Anne Mitchell with the IFA. She's the Galway Trails person, but we'll talk to them in a minute. First of all, I suppose we're just going to share the screen with everyone, and hopefully the technology allows us to do so. I'm just going to show you a quick video of a participant that we had here in Irish Rural Link, who did the Getting Citizens Online program here with us. Sonny O'Brien is his name, and it was in his latter years, and he would never use a computer before, and he's just going to tell his story about the benefit that it has had for him. So I'm just going to play this now, and hopefully all works okay for everyone. If you can just bear with us for 2 seconds as I enable the sound, and maybe my panel might tell me if there's any issues with the sound and that, because I can see those people. So here we go.
Well, initially there was a feeling, frightening feeling of isolation, apart from fears, natural fears from one's own health condition and that. The feeling of isolation has been greatly diminished thanks to my good friend, my laptop here, and I'm happy and easily coping with that at the minute. I wish I could put it into words, Joe, to encourage other people to take up training. Initially, the word on everyone's lips that rang here, or that we rang, was not so much the stocks in our fridge as being deprived of our physical presence at mess. Thanks to live streaming through our laptops and so on, that was as near as you could get to the original presence that we enjoyed over the years. And for that, we're all extremely happy. I have a sister in Connecticut, the emails on my laptop. I have nephews and nieces in the UK or in the USA as well, and it's usually laptop emails with them by reason of the time lag. Locally, my family are pretty near to me. It would be text messages or the phone calls. I want to sincerely thank Irish Rural Link, who coordinate the training of all ages at all levels in computer training throughout the country, and in a particular way to our own local tutor here, Geraldine Delaney, who took me of 1933 vintage to be able to use a laptop.
So there we see a participant of our Getting Citizens online program, Sonny O'Brien, and the impact, I suppose, that it has made on his life. And as I mentioned, this week we're talking about that idea of digital connectivity, and I suppose this pandemic that we're going through at the moment has seen, a large increase in remote working, demand for social interaction online, and the need for the role of high-speed broadband across the country. But I suppose high-speed broadband is not the only issue, I suppose, that we need to consider as well. There's major barriers in terms of people having the skills to go online, the support, maybe a sense of security is needed around that as well. So we're going to discuss all those topics today with our panel. So I suppose the first person that I might just jump to today is Joe Lavin. As I'd imagine, Joe, there's many people online today that are, sitting at home and their screen might be buffering a small bit and they might be waiting for the rollout of broadband. I know Anne ourselves here has had some issues this morning with our own broadband speed. So maybe you might give us a quick rundown what you guys are doing in National Broadband Ireland, and I suppose your own role as well.
Okay, so thank you, James and Sean, for giving me the opportunity to address you all today. My name is Joe Lavin. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer for National Broadband Ireland. So National Broadband Ireland won a contract with the Department of Communications to roll out high-speed broadband to effectively all of the underserved people in Ireland. So anybody who can't currently get high-speed broadband is on our list of premises to pass. It's a mammoth task. It will require us to roll out 140,000 kilometers of fibre across approximately 96% of the land mass of the country. And that includes over 20 islands where we'll bring fibre optic cable onto the island and roll it out to people's homes. To date, we've surveyed about 140,000 premises around the country. So that's premises passed in every county. So we're trying to be as equitable as possible and moving the crews around to make sure that we bring the benefits to all communities. And we're currently building in 5 areas. So we're building in Ballinasloe, the townlands outside of Galway City, townlands in East Cork, sort of outside Carrigaline, and Cavan, and also in Limerick. And the plan is in next year we'll have passed premises in every county as we just expand the build. Part of the first phase also includes what we call broadband connection points. So we've identified that this is a mammoth project. It's probably the biggest project in rural Ireland since electrification back in the middle of the last century. It's going to take us about 7 years to get to everyone. That's all 540,000 odd premises. And so we're doing broadband connection points, which means that we're bringing broadband into particular community centres and GAA halls in each of the counties that will then allow the likes of Jim and Anne to actually provide training in those facilities while people wait for
Perfect. Perfect, Joe. Thanks very much for that kickoff. And I think we probably come back to some of those connection points maybe later on in the discussion today. Jim, if I might come to you next as well, I suppose we're talking about, the need for the broadband there. And I suppose you're coming from the other side as well, that we need to increase that demand and we need to upskill people. I suppose as, an online tutor of all these people, what has been your experience? Is there a demand there? Are people, what are the barriers that are stopping people to get online as well?
Yeah, thanks, James. Yeah, I'm a tutor with Irish Rural Link, and what we done with Irish Rural Link was the digital skills of getting citizens online program. It was a huge success here in Wexford when we rolled it out. And I was asked by a local woman, Anna Keogh here, if I was interested in becoming a tutor for Irish Rural Link. I decided we would, so long as we could roll out the courses in parish halls and community centres. So we had a meeting with Mary from Irish Rural Link, and in fairness to Mary, she put everything in place for us to get everything online, to roll it out here in Wexford. The big problem, of course, of rolling out in parish halls and community centres is a lot of them don't have broadband. So I overcame this by bringing a mobile broadband with me and just getting one laptop connected and using that as a hotspot to connect the rest of the laptops. The process worked really well. And anytime we had any little glitches, I have an IT business for the last 18 years, so I was able to sort it pretty fast, But it was a lot of small villages and rural communities that lost their shops and post offices. So this was the reason for bringing it to the local communities so that people could meet each other again, And also, while they were meeting each other in the local communities, they'll also learn a new technology and use it as an extra tool to keep in contact, which in today's world with the COVID, it proved very beneficial for a lot of them, So we advertised it on local parish newsletters and on social media platforms. The response was amazing, to be honest with you. The take up people were hungry to learn and to get used to technology. So we were up and running in no time. You know?
Yeah, thanks very much, Jim, for that. I suppose just before we go to Anne, if anyone has any questions, please submit them in our Q&A section at the bottom, and we'll try to get through as many questions as we can. We've also had some other questions that have come in beforehand via email, and we'll address those as well. Anne, if we come to you, thanks very much for joining us. You're chairperson of Galway IFA, so I know you've a huge interest in this area, and I suppose as agriculture becomes more modernized and, you know, everything goes online in terms of, you know, registering your calves or your animals, your digital movements, etc. I come from a farm background myself. My own father is trying to go online in terms of registering animals and movements and, you know, compliance and all. It's a huge issue for farmers, and I suppose these work in the most remote areas as well and in an isolated sector. So what's been your experiences around digital technology in the IFA?
Thanks. First of all, thank you very much, James, for the invitation. And indeed, Rural Link has been good to us here in Galway. They've come around to the local schools and local areas and educated our farmers. Like, IFA is a lobby group. We're the voice of farmers. And the farming community might be one of the communities that would not have great experience in technology. A lot of situations we would have older farmers, we would have farmers, you know, who are just continued farming from generation to generation, wrote the check, went to the market, bought the cattle, would never have seen the need for technology. And there's different reasons for that, but this year, 2020, changed that completely because our markets closed down for certain periods, and there was absolutely no way for a farmer to do business. He couldn't buy or sell unless it was online. And that was a huge experience for them. And it proved how necessary it was for them to have some digital skills and some computer skills and be able to operate that way. The Department of Agriculture, like most of our work to be done online, they have a CMMS system, you know, they have Herd Watch, and they would also be encouraging people to do that. Now, I find, of course, our members and a lot of our members who would be of an older age group, and it was so encouraging to listen to Sonny there, a man of 87, to see how he learned it and took it on board without fear. And fear is one of the biggest things. And when the mobile phone was introduced, there was fear of it as well. And I would say that every farmer in Ireland now has a mobile phone. They're able to send text messages, they're able to receive text messages, and they're able to pick up on various happenings around, like in IFA, we have a system where we send out the text message to them all. So having educated themselves on that, and with the help of Rural Link and with a better broadband system in our area, and I was delighted to hear that the National Broadband Ireland is going to help us in that as well and working their way towards us. It's something that everybody, all farmers, should get encouragement. A lot of them live in a very isolated situation. A lot of farmers live alone. They've been deprived of a lot of things in the last couple of years. I live in a small village out in Manlock, and last year we lost all the peas. We lost the parish priest, we lost the post office, and we lost the pub. And they were the outlets for a lot of our farmers. So all they would have after that at home would be the television. So it would be so important and so wonderful that there would be a system like yours that could offer education and training to them that would enable them to, you know, get familiar with this and break the fear barrier.
Yeah, no, and that's excellent. There's a lot of great points, I suppose, raised that I might bring up with Jim in a few minutes. But if I can just go back to you, Joe, I suppose there's a number of questions coming in, as we kind of suspected earlier on as well, and it's kind of leads into a point maybe that you brought in earlier on. We have one attendee saying that they live in Tipperary since the pandemic. She's been working from home, and my best internet speed is 5 megabytes, download. So it's on her house on the list to be upgraded, but it's between 3 to 5 years. So the local connection point is over 30 kilometers away. She says from her perspective, the broadband plan is not fit for purpose, and anything that can be done to accelerate. So I suppose you talked about the connection points, you know, you've talked about 7 years. What are we doing in the interim? You know, the pandemic has shown that increased need. as well. And as technology and demand increases, how are you making sure that the National Broadband Ireland is making sure that your plans are sustainable, they're future proof? Maybe if you give us a bit more detail around those things. And thanks to everyone for their questions.
So I suppose the first thing I'd say is the most up-to-date information is available on our website, so www.nbi.ie. You can enter in an air code and your email address, and then we'll keep you updated with where we are and the progress of the rollout. It's a mammoth task. We're at the end of year one, so there's 6 years for us to get everything completed. We're looking at ways to expedite that. So it is one of the things where we will not be found wanting in trying to expedite that. There are challenges, and those challenges are to do with planning permission and making the routes ready. So it's not as if we can just throw additional bodies at this. There is a significant amount of design work, but I think as we're trying to say, we're ahead in terms of where we expected to be in the number of premises that we've surveyed to date. And that's been a significant challenge for us in terms of when COVID hit last March, we had surveyors on the ground in 6 different areas. But all of a sudden they found that there was nowhere to sleep. All the hotels closed down. So they couldn't, they then had to commute from their homes to those particular areas. So there was a challenge, but we overcame it. We're ahead in terms of where we are with designs. So the first thing we do is we survey an area, then we translate that into a detailed design where we identify exactly how we're going to connect every individual premises, how much fibre optic cable we need, and we're ahead in there. And then the next phase is build. So we have a dedicated team working with the Department of Communications to see if we can expedite it. In the meantime, we have the broadband connection points, and I think St. John O'Connor is on or is here today, one of the attendees. He's actually talking about another phase of broadband connection points. So what we're now looking at, is there a way where people that are in, let's say, the second half of the build, if we can actually bring more broadband connection points into the communities, that it can be used and can be a help while the build goes on.
Yeah, just one quick follow on before we move on, Joe. Again, we have another question here. Would 5G technology be a faster rollout? Maybe that's probably a common question that you probably get asked on a daily basis. Maybe if you could just give us a quick rundown of that as well.
So the first thing is that the contract that we signed with the department is it's a 25-year contract with a 10-year extension. So we're looking at a 35-year program, and the technology that we're deploying, and effectively fibre optic is the only game in town where you think about where the needs of communication is going to be. So the network that we're currently deploying can support up to 10 gigabits per second. Our entry-level product will be 500 megabits, which is significantly higher than most of us on the call are actually using at the moment. But we see that will grow. 10 gigabits won't be enough for individuals. 5G may be a very, very short-term fix, but to deploy it to the whole country would be as expensive. And it would do us for 2 or 3 years, and then it would be out of date. So the government learned back in 2008 when they did the National Broadband Scheme that by the time they actually rolled out that network, technology and demand had moved on. And so I understand it's deeply frustrating that people think that I could be without high-speed broadband for another 3 or 4 years. But at the same point, we're putting in infrastructure that's going to be there for 25 to 35 years.
Yeah, thanks very much, Jim. I suppose Anne raised, a very valid point there at the start as well about, the fear, especially among older people of going online in terms of, maybe putting in bank details or purchasing, or, in terms of farmers buying online. There's definitely a sense of fear there. In your experience, how do you address this fear within the courses? Is there ways that organizations or maybe family members can assist people, to get online? Definitely the pandemic has maybe accelerated people's need to get online due to the lack of social interaction. And, that's not just, an issue for older generations. We have kids, that had to, do all their schooling from home, had to interact with their friends from home over the last, almost year at this stage. So how can we address that fear in older people especially?
Yeah, well, the need to get online actually proves it here. We're having this webinar. So COVID really has shut down everything. So the new world, or the new future, probably everything is going to be online, a lot more anyway. And you're right, yeah, the fear, that's what we were trying to tackle in the, as regards bringing the courses to communities. The first thing, I think you covered it even in last week's seminar, was trying to get people to come out. How do we get the word out, and how do we get them then to come to the local halls, because of the fear of using a laptop, and as well as that the terminology that's used in IT can be a bit alien to a lot of, especially elderly people, you know. But everyone, you know, when we put out the advertising and the newsletters and the social media, they really turned up, and we saw Sonny there at the start of the webinar. We also had a woman down in Duncannon. She was 95, you know, so she turned up and she stuck the course out, and she was there every day. There's a lot of people when they turn up for the course, especially in, just to give you an example of one village that has an estate that has a lot of problems over the years. But when we advertised in this village, most of the people from this estate all signed up for it. And even though when they came in to sign up, they were actually shaking with fear. You could actually see them shaking. Yeah, they're very, very nervous. But they just wanted a second chance. And to be honest with you, watching them progress throughout the course. The course was a 10-hour course, yeah. So it was 2 hours for 5 weeks. But the confidence completely grew. The fear of technology and the fear of being with other people was gone. Also, in our 2-hour lesson, or our 2-hour course, we would, after 1 hour, we would take a break, and we would have a cup of tea and a chat. And that was often far more important than the actual technology aspect, because they just settled into it a lot more. But the actual the hunger to learn, and the hunger for people to get online and to learn how to tax their car, and to learn how to shop online, and to learn how to send an email, you know, they are definitely nervous about it, and but they really do embrace it, and it's surprising how quick every single person who has been through it. I gave, I think, 40 courses in 2019, and there was 8 people per course, and every single one of them, where everyone was able to use a computer at the end.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely fantastic, the work that goes on in terms of, you know, digital upskilling and getting people online. I suppose we have a question in here, Jim, for you. It's from Anne McGallagher, and it's, you know, who funded the training, Jim? And I suppose I can probably answer that from our side as well. Irish Rural Link funded, or you know, is employed by the Department of the Department of Communications, is funded through the Department of Communications to deliver this training across the country. And we have points all over the country where people can get training. And, you know, Jim has given some details of in Wexford. I know, Andy, you're familiar with it in Galway as well. I suppose farmers, you know, are a cohort of people, as I mentioned, are isolated, and their businesses going online more and more. And, you know, you've talked about, you know, the online marts due to the pandemic and stuff like that. I suppose, you know, what kind of stuff are you hearing from your members about what, you know, what they're going to need in the future? I suppose with younger farmers now, especially, you know, more and more of them are doing it online, are doing all their business online. So how can we tackle that? Is there steps within the IFA, or are you guys involved with other training for farmers? You might give us a quick rundown on that kind of stuff as well.
Well, there are different outfits there, if that's the proper word to use, who give training. So, they give it at a price. Certainly, the ones that have availed of your training found it very good. Now, at the time that training was done, it was in 2018. Nobody ever envisaged that a market closed down and that people would absolutely have to do their business online. But going back a step, for the past few years, the Department of Agriculture insists that all applications have to be made online. Now, they provided training and workshops around the country in 2018 and 2019 for farmers who were unable to do their work online, and they were very, very helpful. Now, of course, they couldn't go around the country in 2020 because of the pandemic. And they just, if a farmer was in trouble here living near me, he could come, and with his written authority, I could help him, sit with them and link into the Department of Agriculture. It was cumbersome. First of all, I'll say that, our network was poor, but data protection has put such a curtailment on that type of thing that it slowed it down. And because of data protection and because of demand by all institutions and outfits and departments for people to do everything online, it's so essential that everybody is trained. And break the fear, as Jim and he talked there very positively about breaking the fear barrier. And that's what we need. Young farmers are okay. And anybody who has worked, in an off-farm occupation, as we term it, is bound to have picked up digital skills along the line in the past 20 years. But we still have a cohort of farmers who absolutely do not know how to turn on a computer. And they're the people we need to meet.
Yeah, no, definitely. And, that is a massive issue. And, we're also involved in training farmers online as well, Jim, and we might come to you around that in a minute. Brendan McLaughlin has a question here, Joe, I suppose for you. He says, what plans is Jim aware of and what support schemes are coming on stream to support technology for agriculture development, bringing, edge technologies like robotics, automatics onto farms? Obviously they're even more remote, people that are doing it out in the middle of their farmyard is probably an issue. And he goes on, is there anything out there to help more progressive farms harness these technologies? I suppose, and if you don't mind, you can probably come in on that as well, but I'll go to Joe as well. If you want to maybe start off that point, I suppose we're talking about even more isolated areas, and on-farm stuff rather than households, if you've any kind of comments on that.
Yeah, so I think the first thing is we'll be bringing fiber optic cable to the farms, to the actual premises themselves, and that's I think about 69% of all farms are actually in the intervention area, so they're on our list. In terms of distributing it, once you get that high-speed connection to the farm itself, there's technologies such as Wi-Fi that can be used to distribute out, and there's the likes of artificial intelligence. I saw some, or I should say, I was reading an article about a farm in Italy that's using artificial intelligence on drones to actually scan the ground, identify particular insects, and then rather than using pesticides, that they're actually identifying them, and they're then directing staff to remove the insects. In terms of supports, I'll have to put my hand up and say I don't know about funding supports for the actual farms.
Perfect. And I suppose if you want to have a reflection on that, I suppose it addresses the technology of younger farmers, I suppose, and how progressive that they're getting in stuff as well. Have you got any kind of follow on from that?
Well, I suppose it doesn't arise with the younger farmer. It's taken for granted. It's part and parcel of their everyday life on the farm, that they just use technology and that's it. They couldn't imagine that they would have to do anything otherwise. That's the era they have grown up in. And I mean, for myself, if I was stuck with something here, I can ask my 9-year-old granddaughter to sort it out for me, because that's the world they're living in and that's the world they're growing up in. But it's my concern is for maybe the 60 plus. Normally in every other occupation, when one comes to 65 years of age, they're retiring. That's not happening, as you would know, in the farming community, and people work for as long as they're physically able. And, I don't want to be harping on about them, but they are the people who need the help, and they are the people who need the education. And they're the people who would have needed, the supports like Sonny had and availed of, during the lockdown, being able to Skype somebody, being able to log on for mass. These are very important to country people. My 93-year-old neighbour now, she's great. She picked it up and she Skypes her grandchildren from 9:30 to 10:30 every single night in the week. They're all over the world. That's her lifeline at the moment, since she cannot go to mass or go to the shop.
Yeah. Look, we have a couple of questions coming here from Christine Collins in County Longford as well. She says, morning all, we're currently purchasing furniture and equipment for BCPs in Longford and would love to work with Irish Rural Link and Digital Skills Initiative. Definitely need to support farming communities in particular. So Christine, thanks very much for your comments, and we'd be, delighted to get in contact with you. And she went on to say, there's broadband connection points in every county, so please reach out. I think that information is online, Joe. I think you mentioned it as well. I suppose if we come back, Jim, to you, what type of topics are you covering within the course? We mentioned training there for farmers as well. Courses need to be designed, I suppose, for particular topics as well. In terms of online banking is a huge issue. We've seen more banks, AIB banks were closed yesterday as well in even urban areas, so that is moving more and more online. So, do we need to develop more courses that are catered for certain issues as well, or can we bring them into, larger courses? At the moment, you said there's 8 people in the class. I think, people definitely of an older generation need that small class size, to get that individual attention. Maybe if you give us some more details about the classes themselves. And if people in Wexford, I see some comments from people, Jim, wanting to get in contact with you to do training and all that. So maybe if you might give some details how people can contact you, that would be great.
Well, again, ever since the COVID, everything is online, so from your dog license, tax your car, even now with the local doctor here, we can get our prescriptions online. Everything, your TV license, everything is a lot of elderly people actually contacting me because they might be renewing their driving license. That's another thing that's gone online. So everything is online. But just to, I couldn't agree more with what Anne said there, about the farmers. Like some courses rolled out by Irish Rural Link were targeted and designed for the farming community. And these courses were aimed at getting farmers to register on the ag-food site, and to use the AIM system. The AIM system is Animal Identification and Movement System, right? So this helps the farmers to register calves online and how to use compliance certificates for the movement of animals. The alternative to that was the Blue Book, and for the compliance certificates was posting to put them in the post and post them off, and wait for them a couple of days to come back before you can move any animals. So, but it's the same story as what Anne was saying there, the same story even as before. Many farmers never used the laptop, and the fear factor was well and truly evident in the courses. I'll just give you one quick example of a farmer. We gave farming courses throughout the county here, and they were an absolute success, a really big success. And this will just give you one idea of one. The farmer was called Lar, and he was, and after the first class, when he sat in after the first class, his face was glowing red. His blood pressure was up. His head was in his hands, and he said to me, "Jim, I don't think I can do this course, So, but Lara persevered, and just before the last class, so we went through the 5 classes. So just before the last class, and we were putting out the chairs and the tables to set up the course, Lara came up to me and he said, "Jim, you never guessed what I'd done last night." And I said, "I'm not sure what I need to know now, Lara, but if you want to tell me." And he said, "I registered 4 calves online," with a big smile on his face. He was absolutely delighted. Lara never saw a laptop before and never opened one or done anything that way. So it's stuff like that that Irish Rural Link rolled out that really has made a huge difference to farmers, and the amount of time it saves farmers. They reckon that it saves them, nearly a week in a month, a week in 6 weeks or something like that, by going online and registering and getting the compliance certificates off and running. But what Joe was saying there, going on online, every farm will need to be connected, because I was in a milking parlour the other day setting up a system for a guy, and he had a robotic cleaner going around his parlour cleaning up. So farming is going online big time.
Yeah, I suppose if we come on and to you next, I suppose, what policy supports are needed, I suppose, to support farmers, in terms of equipment that we need, in the next, we're looking at the next common agricultural policy now at the moment, and that's in discussions and stuff like that. And we're looking at designing schemes and green architecture in terms of the environment. And, we had TAMS in the last program as well, that looked at upgrading farms in terms of safety equipment as well as everything else. Is it something that we need to look at in terms of policy for farmers? Do they need to be supported in financial ways? Do agricultural advisors need the training to help people get online as well? Because I know agricultural advisors are a huge support to people. What ways do you think that we can bring in policy to this?
Yes, agricultural advisors are a great support to people. But again, that's at a cost, and that's at an inconvenience also, that there's nothing, if you can do it in your own home, nothing can compare like doing it in your own home. And that's where we would need to have some, maybe IFA, maybe Department of Agriculture, maybe government, wherever the funding can come from, to bring it to the door of the people. I was reading on the comments there, and somebody made the comment, and rightly so, because of the pandemic and because of the lockdown, people cannot meet in groups. The group of 8 that Jim was doing, and it was fantastic because I engaged in that. But now, for the greater part of 2020, that wasn't possible. Anybody over 70 in the first lockdown, they had to cocoon, and now they couldn't go past 5 kilometers, and they had a fear of meeting in groups. So I think people would need a one-to-one training. And they probably need a one-to-one training too for the confidence thing. Because Jim, that was a wonderful story you had about that farmer. But each year candidates or each year students mightn't have got to that level. And they may have fallen back and forgotten what they learned when they hadn't anything, a follow-up for that. Whereas in any situation, if there was a one-to-one training, and that's probably a very big ask, but at the same time, if it's divided down county by county, if it's divided down by age profile, and if it's divided down by the level of skills some of those people have, because some of them will have skills and some of them have none, it could be dealt with that way. And start maybe with the group that has absolutely no skill, and try and take them along. Because if you have some skills, you'll build on them. But if you have no skill, it's to get the foundation right. It's like building a house. If you get the foundation right, it'll work from there up.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And I suppose a link to the foundation, it's all this, Joe, we've talked about, broadband and all that. We have, I suppose, 2 questions maybe that are more addressed to you, with Brexit coming down the line as well. Is there any plans to accelerate the rollout in border areas, especially, given the demands, I suppose, that's going to place on? And I suppose also linked to that, we talked about the connection points, I suppose, within every county, and primary schools and secondary schools are one of those points. Maybe you might give us a bit of a rundown, I suppose, your work in terms of delivering that to the schools. And one listener here actually talked about there's an insurance issue around that as well, that people can't use those schools in the evenings because of insurance issues. Is there any ways, I suppose, we can address that? And I know that's something that Irish Rural Link has been highlighting for years as well, that these schools need to be more utilised for training like Jim is delivering this. So if you can maybe address the one about the border areas first.
So I suppose in reality, Brexit, it's going to affect the border areas, but it's going to affect everybody. The farmers, be they in Kerry or Wexford or Cavan. We're trying to do the build, and the design we came up with, effectively, we got a bunch of our designers and technical guys to go into a dark room and say, come up with the most efficient and effective deployment area. And the only caveat is that it has to be equitable. And what we mean by that is it has to pass premises in every county. So we didn't start in, we said, don't start in Malin and work to Mizzen, or start in Clifton and work to Dublin. And that's primarily because people in the different counties have to benefit from this. It would have been easier to start in one area and blitz a county and then move on to another one, but it wouldn't be seen as equitable because some county would be left towards the end. So we will be passing premises in Monaghan, in Cavan, in Louth, in Donegal next year. We've already surveyed premises. But in terms of Brexit, we haven't got a plan. We're not changing the plan. What we have is we have a defined plan, and what we're now doing is how do we expedite that? How do we build faster as opposed to change where we build? In terms of the BCPs, yeah, they're right. The schools, first of all, it still is important for those schools, the primary schools and the secondary schools, to have access to broadband. There's, I think, probably upwards of 79 will be connected this year with high-speed broadband. And next year, we're looking at a program to effectively look over the next 24 months, connect all national schools in the that are within our footprint, the intervention area, up to high-speed broadband. In parallel, we've recognized that because of COVID, there is a need to make sure that we look at the premises that are in, let's say, the second stage of the build or the second phase of the build, and see, can we look at introducing more connection points, so access hubs in those particular areas to support the local community while we roll out.
Yeah, look, that's hugely important, I suppose. A large proportion of today, we've talked about older people and getting them online, but it's also important in rural areas, I suppose, not to forget kids and maybe teenagers that could be socially isolated for geographical reasons, digitally isolated in terms of not having a broadband. Maybe they mightn't have laptops or whatever. So I suppose we need to bear that in mind as well. And I know with our community champions program that we ran during the pandemic as well, we've seen that need out there every day. There's a lot of kids maybe didn't have access to laptops and stuff like that to have to work from home, so we need to bear that in mind, that we're not excluding the younger people as well. So it's great to hear, I suppose, the rollout in school, and it's going to be very important to their educations going forward. Christine Collins and Jim also said, look, she's very encouraged by your stories that you talked about, and you need local citizens to address that fear. There's also another question from another lady down here as well that talks about how do we identify young and older people who are not online, who only use TV, radio, newspapers as a mean of getting information to them. So, we still need to focus on more traditional forms of media and, that personal approach. And that's why we have people like you, Jim, all over the country that know, that might go into active retirement groups and to identify these people. So maybe you might talk a bit about how, you worked in terms of getting these people. Did you rely on local radio stations? Did you rely on newspapers, etc.?
Yeah, I suppose you really, when you're going local, you go local. So there's nothing more local than the church. So the priest used to announce it at Mass. Yeah. So that got most of the elderly in anyway. Parish newsletters. I couldn't believe it because I didn't think parish newsletters would work. Parish newsletters were absolutely massive as regards getting people into the community halls. Just to say too, I saw some of the questions there. Like at the moment, we're not given any classes or any courses because we're closed down because of COVID. So like I said, last 2019, I think I gave 40 or 45 courses throughout Wexford. And that was an awful lot, but it was full on. But the actual the experience and watching people at the end of it, we give out certificates at the end, yeah. And we usually give them out, call the names, and we have a big round of applause and a big cheer, and it's a great ending, So, but because it's so we stopped about this time last year, and so it was great momentum in the county, and it still is there actually. But even we thought then coming back in January, would it be the momentum was gone? So like what you were saying there, James, to get people back in. But really, we just went back to the same thing again, the parish newsletter. And I must say also, in all of these parishes, yeah, and all of these parish halls and community centres, they really, the committees have absolutely brilliant, really brilliant people, yeah. And so they all remembered us from the year before, and it was the committee members, one or two particular members in each committee that actually pushed it into the churches and pushed it onto the newsletters. And they were the ones who actually got into the locals, you know, and they were really, it really opened my eyes. But anyway, the momentum kicked in again, and I had a course started down in Bridgetown, and we had 10 on it in a local centre. And 2 weeks in, we had to close down because of COVID. But we had 10 other courses lined up, but they're shut down at the moment. So probably maybe it might be something for Irish Rural Link and maybe the Department of Communications to try and see can we get up these again. There's like what Anne was saying, that people who are socially isolated at the moment, they can't go out. My own mother, even, for example, you know, she's sort of afraid to go out. She's 84 or 5. But so to just maybe if it was some sort of a Zoom call or some sort of online lesson that we could do.
Yeah, that's a very good point, Jim. And I suppose that's something that we in Irish Rural Link are considered at the moment. You know, when people can't physically meet up to do the training, and obviously they're not online already, how do we address that need? You know, how do we keep these people, you know, engaged, I suppose? And, you know, there also needs to be a follow-on, Jim, from the courses that you do.
Yeah.
You know, as we said at the start, very basic, but people maybe get an appetite then to expand their learning further and all that. And I suppose if you come to you, you know, edge technologies, we have a question here from Brendan McLaughlin again. He says, edge technologies are critical in combating rural crime. I suppose that's a major issue for IFA in terms of machinery and stuff being stolen from farms and all that, especially people living remotely and all that. You know, Brendan believes that the panel would agree innovation that embracing new technology is vital to rural areas and to farming communities. And they're currently working on rural crime prevention on farms. So I suppose he asks, you know, what needs to be done to support greater adaptation beyond training and bandwidth. You know, it's not just a broadband issue, it's not just a training issue. Do you see any other issues there to addressing, you know, that fear that's out there that technology can do? You know, rural crime is obviously a major issue for farmers. How can that be addressed? How is IFA addressing it? Is there technologies out there? I know it's something that Irish Rural Link always speaks about, you know, about checking in on your neighbour. And, you know, there's Minster and Tierna we had on last week's panel, you know, do a lot of work around that and the community alert, etc. Is that something maybe you want to comment on?
Yes, we have, and most areas have community alert. And we also in IFA, we have a crime prevention officer. He's a detective. He comes to our meetings, or he comes to local hall, or did come again. We all have to accept how we live differently in 2020. We would have him in person. We would hold our executive meetings monthly online, and we would have him speak, particularly this year, to encourage people, because while they were cocooning and isolating, the danger was bigger. A lot of farmers, but again, I will stress this, the younger farmer, they have their camera, you know, they're in their calving sheds, in their lambing sheds, yoked into their television, and they have a view of their farm 24/7. Unfortunately, again, that is confined mostly to a younger age group, but it's great. It's absolutely wonderful. On your screen, you have the activity around your farm, maybe focused for a good bit on the particular calving shed or lambing shed, but it can be geared to swivel around and to pick up anything that would be going on around the farm. We also have our own CCTV cameras, and we have my camera now, my yard camera, while it's able to take in the yard, it's also able to take in somebody leaving the yard. And beside the gate, I have a camera that if somebody comes in and they're hooded and they're picking up something shouldn't be picking up or stealing, when they turn around to leave, they're facing a hidden camera, so their face is picked up. Or sometimes, you know, an aspect of their car or their vehicle could be picked up. Now, thank God I didn't experience it firsthand, but it's there. It's a security I find, because I live alone. It's a great security.
Thanks very much. And Joe, I suppose if we come back to you, you know, we've talked a lot about broadband and, you know, the fear and all that today. I suppose there's probably a bit of work needs to be done around, you know, the public awareness of when broadband has been delivered to you. And I know you guys are involved in that as well. You've developed a number of maps and stuff like that to try to give people timelines. You know, if people are, you know, want to get more information about themselves, maybe to have a business in a particular area that they might need, maybe they're thinking about setting up a business, where can they go to get that information, and who should they contact? You know, as you know, the local broadband officers in every county as well. Like, suppose should point out are a very useful resource for people?
Yeah, so we work with the broadband officers in the various counties, and we provide a regular update at their meetings. They have a telecom action group meeting once a month. In terms of finding out the latest information, so we have our website, www.nbi.ie. We have a phone line which goes to a contact centre, which is 0818 624 624, and that's staffed with people who can answer people's questions. I would ask anybody to just register on our website, so we then have information that we can send out by email on a regular basis as to how the road is going. There's also, if people find that they're not on the map, so in other words, they go onto our website and they find out that they're not in the intervention area, but they believe they should be, there's an email address for the government where they broadband@gov.ie, and they can email the Department of Communications, who will then go and see if the particular premises should have been added to the list of premises that we're passing, and in which case we'll add them to our list and build past them.
Thanks, Joe, for that information. We've Claude here from Inishmore Island, on the Inishmore and Aran Islands. So thanks very much for joining in, Claude. I suppose, will broadband be rolled out to the offshore islands due to the COVID pandemic? You know, a lot of senior citizens don't have the skills to be online, you know, and felt isolated. So I know you mentioned about the 20 islands showed the year address. Maybe give a quick update on that as well, maybe for Claude's benefit.
Yeah, so all of the islands, any premises in the whole country, and that includes, I think it's 23 islands, we'll actually be providing service to. So that's the three, Inishmore, Inishman, Inisheer, Tory Island, Inishboffin, Bear Island down in Cork, and some of the other islands down there, Valentia Island. So they're all on our list, and they'll be provided with the same service that we'll be providing to other people. It's likely that some of the islands that are too far offshore for us to run fibre optic cable undersea, we'll use very, very high dedicated point-to-point microwave links to get onto the island, and then we'll convert it back into fibre and pass the premises. The broadband connection points, there were a number of the points added to the actual islands. What we found was that during the COVID pandemic, we were restricted from getting access to the islands to actually survey the site and install the equipment, but that's now back on track. And so the broadband connection points for the particular islands is proceeding with the installation. So while it won't be to every house, there will be high-speed connection points on the islands.
Thanks very much, Joe. That's useful information. And Claude, I hope that answers your question. I suppose Irish Link, I suppose we've talked about the training that we've done as well, and we've actually completed training on a number of the islands around Ireland as well. So if there is people that are in need of training on islands, please do contact us. You can visit our website, irishurlink.ie, or you can call the office here as well, and I'm sure we can help you guys, you know, to train people online. I suppose we're coming towards the end of our webinar. If I can just kind of go around, you know, the panel very quickly. Jim, you know, if you were talking to the Minister for Communications tomorrow, what would you say to him needs to be done? You know, what should be his priorities over the next 2 years? And that, you know, we've mentioned the broadband. Is there other areas that you think need to be expanded on? And, you know, if you just wouldn't mind addressing that.
Yeah. Well, I'd say social isolation at the moment in rural Ireland is massive. And there's only one way at the moment to tackle it anyway, and that's with technology. So we really need to get the training back online, whether it is online or a reduced number in the halls. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So we really need to do that. And it really, for the courses that we even gave before, so anyone who set a course before, that was it. Really, the benefit was if they could have came back and set a second time, that would have been, you know, would have really hammered it home, and they would have been really, really comfortable with it. So I think just getting the elderly who have been cocooned has been a tough year on them, and it's definitely a tough year in the youth as well. But from what I can see from the elderly, they have been cocooning, and their only means of contact, like Sonny said at the very start, was his best friend, his laptop, that he can contact his daughter in America or his sister. And that's the same for an awful lot of old people now. So I would just the future from here on in, and contacts especially for elderly, it's with technology. And once Joe has his broadband rolled out and we're all able to see each other and talk without anything. But then of course the other thing I would say too is when we do give these lessons in these courses, security is an awful big thing which must be trained and must be taught as well, because it's a new world. Online is a new world, and we definitely need to be secure there as well.
Thanks very much, Jim, for that. And I suppose the same question to you from the IFA's perspective. What would you be saying to the Minister for Communications tomorrow?
Well, I would be asking him to link in with the Minister for Agriculture and introduce a scheme and finance it. We had a scheme there for the past number of years called Knowledge Transfer. That was where farmers physically met and transferred their knowledge verbally. So I would be looking for a similar scheme to transfer and to train and to learn and to share the IT knowledge. I would also be looking for broadband, naturally, to be rolled out. Every time we go on one of these Zooms, we're not sure from 1 minute to the next, are we going to get through without a breakdown? I get this message every few minutes on my screen, your broadband connection is unstable. And I hope for the best. So, and that would be true of lots of people. So that's what we would be looking for.
Thanks very much. I suppose, Joe, if we just come to you finally, there seems to be a lot of pressure on your shoulders now to deliver that. And we've heard it from our panelists and I suppose from our audience members today. I suppose, what would you say to people, that are in these areas, maybe that are thinking about setting up a business and that? Can you give them any reassurance going forward and so on, and, plans for the future?
So I suppose the first thing is no one will be left behind. So we will. It's a big project, but at the end of it, everybody will be connected, or will have the opportunity to connect. So that's an interesting point. We'll give everybody the opportunity to purchase broadband, but it's the likes of Jim and Anne then that really come to the fore, because in educating why you need broadband. So it's more than just Netflix. It's needed if you're a farmer. You need it for transferring or registering cattle. You need it for security. You need it for finding out what's going on the farm if you're remote. But more importantly, you need it to communicate as well. So as has been seen since last March, it's a necessary tool. I think we're thankful that the Department of Comms recognized this a long time ago. Unfortunately, it took a while for the tender process to complete, but we're on the ground now. We're surveying. We're doing the job. It's going to take us time to get to everyone, but we will get to you, and we'll provide a network that is future-proofed and is reliable and will support everyone's needs, not just now, but into the future as well.
Thanks very much, Joe. I think that's an excellent point. I suppose that we're addressing the needs that that the service you guys providing is future proof, and that we don't need to roll out again this in another 10 or 15 years time, that we are future proofing, and I think that's something that's hugely important. I suppose I'd just like to thank the three panelists, Jim, Anne and Joe, for joining us today. I think it was an excellent discussion and we covered a lot of areas there as well. So thanks very much for giving your time and participating. Thanks also to everyone that joined us online. This webinar has been recorded and we will upload it to our YouTube channel hopefully tomorrow evening or that. So please check that out. Also, our series of webinars has been going on now for the last couple of months, and you can look back on all the webinars that we've done previously as well. Next week's webinar will be the fourth and the last in our series on health and well-being as well. So we're going to look at funding opportunities for the community sector in 2021, and we have an excellent panel going to contribute on the day. We have representatives from Rethink Ireland, Community Foundation of Ireland and the Stauncher Care Programme. So please do join us next week at the same time at 10 a.m. and the invitations will be going out. So thanks very much for joining us, and we'll talk to you all next week.